We need to love. This is the law of God. A master of the law, therefore, knowledgeable of the Old Testament, having before him a carpenter's son, who was teaching and leading people along the path of liberation, claims his wisdom, his knowledge, to humiliate the Galileo before his disciples, before everyone present. The question of the master of law contains the essential data of eternal life as an end, but only for those who live the truth proclaimed in DT 6 and 6:4 and LV 19:18. Jesus counters the question with another question. What is written in the law? How do you read it? The teacher is forced to quote the two texts of doubt and love. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your strength and with all your mind. That is, to love with all the charm, with all of life, spending oneself totally for God and using one's intelligence for the deepest knowledge of the Lord. That is, being absolutely turned to God. Then, your neighbor as yourself. Faced with the answer, Jesus places himself beyond the reach of the master of the law, agreeing with the answer, but adding an important, do this and you will live. That is, the need not only to know, but to put it into daily practice. In daily life, of family and community relationships, and with the world. The master of the law wanted to justify himself. And who was my neighbor? With this question, he simply demonstrated his understanding of neighbor was greatly reduced, for like every good Jew, neighbor means a relative, someone from the same community or for the same country and from the same religion. Jesus perceives the limitations of those who question him and gives him the most important lesson about God's love through the parable of the Samaritan. According to Jesus, a neighbor is someone who is part of the is not someone who is part of the same family or friendship cycle, the same community, country, or religion. It is not the consanguinity or the same nationality that characterize the next, such as a vision, is nothing more than a logic proper to all nations. There is nothing new in this form of action. Next in Jesus' logic is everyone in need, and this is universal. It is everyone who needs attention, a hug, advice, food, health, education, and security. He is also one who needs formation, knowledge of truth, expectations, and hope, and yet to be more empathic. A neighbor is one who, in the face of the needy, puts himself at his disposal for his good. So in this case, there is, in addition to what you need, a requirement to make yourself close. The master of the law understood the new teaching. He understood that the law of God is a gift for the liberation of the human being, and that for this it requires renewed man and woman, according to Jesus Christ, to be authentic instruments of God's instruction. That master, after that encounter with Christ, conquered a new way, the most perfect way of transmitting the Torah, because he passed to the understanding of essence of the law of God. It is clear, therefore, that knowledge of the law is not enough, but also, above all, the most correct way of applying it, which cannot be other than that of the Savior. Jesus Christ is, in himself, the legitimate interpretation of the law of God, being himself the fulfillment of it. The next is, he who showed mercy. It is not a matter of favoring in a state of sin. It is not the same thing as pitying someone who sins and keeping him in his sin. It does not mean giving rights to people in a serious situation of distance from themselves and from communion with God, so as to not exclude the other. Acting in this way is the same as perceiving in one's life the dictates of a world that ardently desires right, but without commitment, responsibility, and without conversion. To be merciful is to act saving the other. How to save it? Take care of them and their needs, both physical and spiritual. Those who love God do not want misfortune, either for themselves or for others, and there is no greater disgrace than sin. Those who fight for the conversion of themselves and others are acting in the name of the most important expression of God's love. So let's take care of each other, do good, correct mistakes, show God's horizon to those who need to meet with Him. That's mercy. Now let's go and do the same thing.